Hi, YouTube fans. This is Matt of Post April 6 YouTube channel. Tonight I got a really good story, a really good one. I mean, I've been thinking so heavily about it for the last 4 to 5 days. I mean, it's all I think about. And this story it's a working title. It's not an official title. It's called Burbank NBC Studios Night Crew. Yep. And it's about a man named Marvin Lloyd Cadog, or Cadog, or Cadog, C-A-D-O-G. Cadog is a Scottish descent last name. Now Marvin was not born in Scotland or anywhere in the United Kingdom. He's born in good old faithful United States of America. But where he's born, I'm not going to get to that just yet. I gotta give one more piece of information before I do that. His date of birth is December 30th, 1938. He was this close to being born in 1939. Where he was born, his place of birth, and his original hometown was Watertown, South Dakota. Yep, Watertown, South Dakota. The first job he held was an assembler for a company called Smith Equipment. He started working there when he was about 17 years old. Okay. Now, people are thinking, how long did Martin live in Watertown, South Dakota? From the day he was born in late 1938 until 1967. And it says, the next question would be, when did Marvin move to Burbank, California? The day he moved there was August 3rd, 1967. Because with him, he got into a 1964 Chevrolet pickup truck. I think it might have been a C10 or something like that. It was 1964. And it was one of those, it didn't have a V8 in it, it had a straight 6. About somewhere between 225 and 250 or 252 cubic inch engine. And it had that 3 on the tree shifter, where you shifted on the column. Manual shifting, not automatic. Okay. And he lived with a friend at first for about 3 weeks. And the friend was somebody he immediately made friends with back in high school back in 1955. And him and the man he moved, who'd been living in Burbank for a while, that was a old high school buddy, was named Eddie D. BLAIRWOOD. BLAIRWOOD. And they kept in touch. They're really good friends. And then the next statement is, what did Marvin get after moving to Burbank, California? Or no, let me rephrase that. Ugh. What job did Martin get after moving to Burbank, California? Okay, so for a couple of years, he worked for a company, and he got paid decent money. I think he got paid, oh heck, at least $6 an hour, because $6 an hour back in '67 was big bucks. He was a parts washing man, because the certain companies would outsource certain engine parts, like carburetors, water pumps, exhaust excuse me, exhaust manifolds, valve head valves, valve covers of cylinder heads, and they would also send certain alternators and generators to them, and they would really clean them up, but good. And they had the legal rights to put certain stickers on the alternators, so that the buyer would know what they were about, and he would know if he's putting the right alternator on the right engine instead of the wrong alternator on an engine that's going to cause a serious problem. And after a couple of years, in about the first or second week of November of 1969, he got hired on as a maintenance man and a guy who did some janitorial work at NBC Studios at night. Well, night crew in the sense that he wasn't overnight, but he would come in around 3 p.m. and he would stay till 10 or 11. Let me correct that. From 2 p.m. until 9:30 or 10 p.m. And he was making $10 to $11 an hour, or he was at least making $10 to $11 an hour by a certain date that I'm going to talk about. But when that date is, I'm not going to give it away, because I'm going to be really causing some confusion to the YouTube viewer. Now, the next question that people are asking is, did Marvin ever get married, and when did he get married? He got married on December 5th, 1969, at a Methodist church near Burbank, and they lived together and were really in love and had a good relationship until December 8th, 1977. And they didn't get into a big argument and leave each other. A really major health problem occurred with Betty. She was taking some hypertension medications, and she was watching her diet, but she really couldn't control her blood pressure by very much. And the cardiologist was, it'd be the type of medication that would control cholesterol and whatnot, but it wasn't quite effective. And on December 18th, 1977, at approximately 7:12 p.m., they're sitting, watching TV, enjoying it, and Betty's not having any chest pain, and she's happy. And then all of a sudden, she feels a pain, like somebody went like this to her heart, and she's like going, and she's like, and she says to Marvin, she goes, Marvin, I'm having a heart attack. Call the ambulance. And she's crying. And he gets up off the phone and he calls her, and then after they are done, she's all going, and she goes, she's dead. And he stands there and he thinks for like 5 seconds. He gently picks her up. He gets her to lay down flat on her back, because he knows from first aid CPR training to do this. And he starts pumping her chest, and he goes like this, and he blows. He does mouth to mouth resuscitation, and he just keeps doing. He keeps chest compression and doing it, and then finally she opens her eyes. She goes, and she grabs his hand, and she says, "Thank you." And I said, and he, he strokes her hair, and he gives her a kiss on the forehead, and he says, "Betty, it's going to be all right. I'm really glad I saved you." And he wipes tears out of his eyes, and he says, "The ambulance is on the way. I can hear them. Can you hear them?" He goes, "No." And they get closer. He goes, "Oh yeah, I hope that's the ambulance." And she says, and he says to her, just stay calm. Just continue to lay there, and try to relax. Try to relax and try to take the breaths that you think will help your heart feel better. And she says, or no, excuse me. She says to him, "Get me some aspirin now." And he runs into the bathroom, and he takes some hard aspirin, and he gives her a couple of tablets, and she drinks it down. And then all of a sudden, right after she swallows it, I'll go to the door and I'll demonstrate this. He hears this. That's the paramedics, and he can hear him say, "Hello, hello." It's a man and a woman, and he lets them in, and they go rushing over there, and he asks a few questions, and they gently pick her up, and they put her onto the stretcher, and they ask her a few questions, and then they get her into the ambulance, and they rush her to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. That's one of the best places for coronary care. And he gets in his truck. It'd probably be a 1973 or 74 Ford Courier, which is a more compact truck. And he gets to to Providence, and he goes and he parks his car over by where the emergency room area entrance is, and he has to wait until the person that's in the entrance area, I think that would be, if that's not a receptionist, that's a coordinator, something like that. And then just before he is allowed to see her, he hears a different ring ring sound, and then she picks up the phone. She goes, okay, I'll tell him, okay, thanks, bye. And then she writes it down, and she goes, and this is, "Mr. Cadog, can you come over here?" And he stands up and he walks over there, and he says, "Okay, I can't walk over there with you, but if you talk with this man," she points to a guy who's a nurse and a emergency room. It would either be an attendant or a whatever the official job title would be, and he follows that man to the private emergency room that she's in, and they sit and they talk for about at least 5 to 10 minutes, and then after that, a doctor comes in, and the doctor says, "Mr. Cadog, I know you. I appreciate you showing love and concern and affection for your wife, but you've been here for 10 minutes. You can't stay any longer. Why don't you check with her tomorrow once we got her stabilized in a hospital room?" He said, "Okay." So he goes out, and then as they're walking over to an area where they sit at this area where it would be the nurse's station, or where desks are, and they sit and talk for at least 3 to 4 minutes, and the doctor gives Martin his business card, and then they shake hands, and then Martin leaves, and he goes over to where his truck is, and he goes back home, and he's pretty shook up. He had a good cry after he got home because he was upset. And somewhere after, I would say about somewhere between 1:30 a.m. and about 2 a.m., he dozes off on the recliner chair for a bit, and he's like, "Oh, I better get to bed." So he shuts off the TV, he takes a couple of vitamins, says his prayers to the Lord, and he gets into his undies, and he crawls into bed and goes to sleep. And then what happens is she gets an angioplasty at one point, and she gets some other blood thinner treatment and some other things. I mean, she's getting treatment several times a day while she's in that hospital. Quite sadly, on 9:34 a.m. of December 21st, 1977, she suffered a second heart attack. And the cardiology specialists come in there within seconds, and they try 4 times to resuscitate her. And I would say at about 9:49 a.m., she's pronounced dead. And quite sadly, I believe it would be the cardiology doctor himself places a phone call to Marvin, and he's told the sad news. And after he cries for a few minutes, he calls work and says that he can't make it and why. And they're very understanding, and they give him at least 3 to 4 days off. In fact, I think they give him a week off with pay. And a couple days after the funeral, he goes back to work. Yeah, when Betty was the age that Betty was when she died was 41 years old. Before I go any further, I want to give just a little bit of information about Betty. Betty's full name was Betty Danielle Crockett Cadog. She was born December 1st, 1936, which means she was about 2.5 years older than No, I take that back. She was 2 years older than Marvin. And she was not born in South Dakota. She was born in Norwalk, California. Now people are thinking, okay, where did Marvin live in Burbank? The 1900 block of Rose Street, in a 1,300 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. Back then, the best assumption I could make when they got it, it was worth at least $58,000. I mean, $58,000 in the 70s was a hell of a lot of money for a house. Yeah. And in Burbank, that's fairly cheap. Now that same house is worth, and I kid you not, because I looked this up, because I can't say the exact street number of this one. It's worth over $800,000. Yes. Okay, so on October in October of 1980, Martin has some interesting things going through his mind while he's sitting at the bench waiting for the next, what they called Burbank bus, Burbank Transit. And I'll get a definitive date here pretty soon, so just stay tuned. Okay, I have done some research, and here is the key plot date. That would be the main plot of the story and the main purpose of the story. It is Monday, October 20th, 1980. Yeah, I verified this date to make sure that it would be, the October 20th would be on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you know what I mean. Okay, so here's how the day goes. He's working a typical, you know, he's a Monday through Friday man. He doesn't work on Saturdays and Sundays. He works a 2 p.m. to 9:30 shift at, it was then called NBC Studios. And not only that, it was the key location where The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was filmed. Yep. And there would be times, and he made sure to stay far away from him, that he would see Johnny Carson and a couple of other people that helped work with him concerning whatever they did with the show. And he never went up and talked to him. I mean, Johnny did come over to him and shake hands with him and chat with him for like about 2 or 3 minutes a couple of times. But other than that, you know, they didn't socialize with it, because he knows that if he constantly tries to go up and talk to Johnny Carson, that's a big no-no, and he's at risk of losing his job. That's a major act of insubordination if he does that. So he wakes up, I would say about 10 a.m. He immediately After he gets out of bed, he showers, he goes to the bathroom, showers, shaves, brushes his teeth, takes a, he was 41 years old. He had reddish brown hair, and he was having a few little gray streaks, but, you know, other than that, he looked like a fairly, he looked about his age, which is 41 years old, and he wasn't going to turn 42 for another 2 months. And he goes into the kitchen, and he takes out a skillet for pancakes, and a skillet that he's going to make to use some over easy eggs. And he makes himself a breakfast that he so desires. And then after he's done making breakfast, he goes to the backyard and he mows the lawn. He's got a nice Briggs and Stratton mower that he only paid about $75 for at Kmart. And then he goes into the house and he vacuums, because he hadn't vacuumed his house in a couple of weeks. Things are getting icky. And he dusts some furniture. And then at about 12:55, 1 o'clock, he thought, well, I don't want to be hungry, so I'll make myself a little sandwich. He makes a ham sandwich with ham, lettuce, tomato, a little bit of mustard, and then at about 1 p.m. he leaves the house. He walks over to a bus stop that is about 1.5 blocks away. And the bus was running a little hot. He didn't miss the bus. But right after he sat down, about 45 seconds later, he sees the bus coming. And he reaches into his pocket, he pops a quarter into the slot, and he takes that bus for about 9 to 10 blocks. He gets off. He waits at a park and ride area for about 6 to 8 minutes, and the next bus comes. The next bus gets him to an area near where he needs to go, and he has 10 minutes, because he's already in the uniform, to go over to the spot where he needs to go, where he goes to his punch card, and he goes boom, and punches in for the day. And then he goes to talk to his boss, and he says, yeah, he says, do your usual thing. The only difference is when you go over to stage 2 and pick up, and use a dolly when you do this, utility dolly, pick up 5 different boxes and bring them back to the storage, you know, over that way. He says, when do you want me to do that? He says, I'll let you decide. You're a very good worker. You just make sure to get it done before 8 o'clock. It's okay, great. So he gets his tool belt and some other things, and he does his rounds, and he does a little bit of voltage checking in a few areas, because, you know, all of that, I mean, he checks only the areas he's supposed to check. Then he takes the belt off and he hangs up where he's supposed to hang it up. He goes over with one of those big brushes that you sometimes see in a grocery store or a retail store. And he does it, and on one floor he just does sweeping on like 4th floor, and then he does one on the 5th floor. And after that's done, he makes sure to notate that he got that done. And then what he does is he goes and checks some HVAC filters, and he puts a mask over his face like this, and he checks everything, and he makes sure to stay away from the area where the Tonight Show is filmed, because when he goes in there, that's a no-no. Unless they request him to go in there, that's a no-no. Don't go mess around in there, because otherwise you're gonna get in some pretty serious trouble. Then he gets on the little talkie, and he says to his boss, he says, okay, he says, I'm gonna go check the outside area, and any litter, I'll make sure to pick it up. He says, okay, good. This is a good idea. He says, he says, there's a lot of people going around in the city. You never know what you can find. So he gets one of those 55-gallon trash buckets with a 55-gallon trash bag in there, and he just goes around the perimeter of the whole property, and he checks everything. And he has a flashlight, because see, it's dark out, and he's got to check a few little things just to make sure. And then he comes back in from there, and when all that's done, it's lunchtime, which for him is about 6:30 p.m. He clocks out for lunch. He goes over to the, I believe it would be called the commissary, and he is given a voucher to spend as much as $8 on lunch, which is pretty generous back in 1980. He gets himself a cheeseburger with onion rings, and it's going to be a little bigger than this, a little thing of Pepsi. You know, it would be a little bit larger than this one. It'd be about 9 to 10 fluid ounces. And then he gets back to where he's supposed to clock in. He's a minute over, but you know, they're not gonna reprimand him for that. And then he goes back into the room, and he looks at the checklist. And the only thing else that he has to do is go over to the area, it's called the ground level, and he checks to make sure that all of the of those pipes are about this big around that would work with the air system. He makes sure to check everything. He doesn't do any wrenching or anything. He just checks, shines a flashlight on so he can get a clear view of it and looks at everything. And then what he does is from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. he does mopping in certain areas, and he puts up the wet floor signs, that are stored in certain little closets, maintenance man closets or janitorial closets. And then once he's done at least 3 floors, he's covered everything, it's 9 o'clock. So he puts away, he goes into all the floors and gets up the wet floor signs and puts them away. And then he goes into the room and he writes a little report. And by the time all that's done, it's at least 9:25. So he grabs his coat and his backpack out of the locker. He walks over where he's supposed to go, and at 9:30, 9:31, he clocks out. Then he gets to the bus stop, and he has to wait at least 15 minutes for the bus that gets him home. The first thing he sees, and usually, he sees this every once in a while, but usually he doesn't get bothered by it. But he sees this guy with his shirt nearly torn off. He's about a block over that way instead of over that way. And this guy's just like going. He moves in. Oh, fucking care. And Marvin's not going to go over there and tell him to stop, because he knows if he does that, he's doing some provoking that's going to cause the guy to get violent, and he could be doing something that was called inciting violence. And then he looks over that way, and there's this businessman who has a red suit coat, a bright silver necktie, and he's got a nice stainless, I guess it would be called stainless steel briefcase. It's not for cameras. You can tell by the size of it. It's a brief, and the design of the briefcase, despite having that that finish on there that makes it look like a camera case. He's just the guy from one side of the street to the other. He just paces back and forth like this. And he's all going. And then he paces back and forth like this again, and he just goes like that. And then he just looks up at like this and goes, "What am I gonna do?" And then the guy goes running that direction up a street. And then he sees the bus coming. And he gets off, he gets on the bus, pays his 25 cents, and the bus takes him to that park and ride spot that he's been before. And then he gets off the park and ride spot, at the right time. And the bus driver for the route that's going to get him like a block and a half from his house is already there. And he's like thinking, what? Why is he already here? I don't get it. I mean, he doesn't say this to the guy, he's just thinking it in his mind. So he walks over to the bus, and the doors are closed. The guy just kind of just sits there, goes like this, and he starts reading from a book that, I mean, he doesn't know what's on the book by the cover, but he can kind of tell. It's probably an employee manual or a manual for him to read for the purpose of being a bus driver. The proper conduct he's supposed to have and how he would drive. And then all of a sudden the bus driver turns on the bus, and then he hears this and the door opens, and the bus driver is really friendly. Goes, he sits at him, and he looks over about like this and goes like that. He says, "Oh, thanks." And he shows him the transfer. He says, "Oh, cool." And then he takes the bus to the stop that is a block and a half from his house. And he walks over to his house. He opens up his mailbox, which is right by the sidewalk. And there is a stack of mail this thick. The number of envelopes and magazines and advertisements that are in there, there is, I would assume, over 20 different items for him to look at. Yeah. And he unlocks the door, he goes in, he turns on the lights, and he thinks to himself, well, I really got to watch TV if I want to see what this is all about. Because by the time he gets home, it's somewhere between 10:25 and 10:40 is the best guess I can make. And he sits on the dining room table, and he starts going through things one by one by one. Most of it's advertisements. And then after he gets to envelope number 11, it's a bill from Pacific Bell. And he's not too shocked. It's a bill for about $44 because he made a few long distance phone calls. He was expecting it. He's like, okay, whatever. And then he gets a bill from the gas company. And the bill from the gas company is fairly big. It's $67. $67 in 1980 was big time. And then he sees a advertisement It's in a 3x5 envelope, or no, excuse me, number 10 business size envelope, not a 3x5 envelope. Yeah. And it's an advertisement for a new touch-tone phone where he can have painted on the on the phone itself the skyline of Burbank, because he has 4 choices: the skyline of Los Angeles, the skyline of San Francisco, or the skyline of New York City. And he's like, whatever. And he goes, and he throws it right in the trash. And then after he gets to envelope number 17, what it is his cousin. Yes, his cousin Hank, who lives in an area that would be different from Watertown, South Dakota. And inside the nice letter is a $20 bill and a $10 bill. Oh, I mean, shit, that helps him out. He likes that. And then he goes through another envelope, and it's about it's them trying to persuade him to get into Encyclopedia Britannica, and there's one. It's envelope number 22 or 23. There's a response letter from a company who makes S.C. Johnson wax products, and there are 3 different coupons inside there for 50 cents off. 3 different cleaning chemicals made by S.C. Johnson wax. Yeah. And the one magazine that is it's set for sales as a not a sample, but it's a free issue, but inside the issue is a thick, bulky envelope. It's from Time Life. Yeah. It's like, I'll look over the magazine, I'll think about it. And then after about 10:50, he turns on the TV and he watches, I would assume that it would be channel 8, 9, or 10. You know, this is back in before digital TV. It'd be a VHF channel. And what comes on after, I think there would be a soap opera called Soap. Yeah, the one with Billy Crystal and Robert Mulligan. By the time that ends, there's a commercial for about 2-3 minutes. And he sees the opening credits of a really good Alfred Hitchcock film that came out in 1959 called North by Northwest. And he watches that thing from start to finish. Because the last time prior to this date that he saw that film in a movie theater was way, way back in 1959 when it originally was released in the movie theaters. Yeah. And about a couple hours later, it's roughly about 1:15 in the morning. He's really tired. So he gets into his undies, because he doesn't sleep in pajamas. He doesn't like to do that. And he goes to sleep. Well, this has been quite a fairly long YouTube vlog. That's about it for now. This may be exciting, this may not be exciting. But I hope all of you who are watching this enjoyed this vlog. Thank you, everyone, for watching this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And if you want to send me a nice greeting card, a gift, or a donation, you can send it to the P.O. Box address that I'm about to post pretty soon. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye now.